The town make the long trip to Turf Moor to take on Burnley on Saturday afternoon in a reversal of the opening day of the season, which we hope goes a whole lot better than what that one did. Alongside me to preview the game is the Lutonian journalist James Cunliffe. Jimbo, I suppose scoring a goal will be an achievement here, really.
It would certainly be a turn up for the books, yeah.
We will preview whether that might or might not happen, and so much more right after this intro.
I believe our supporters are the best supporters in the country.
I love this town. I love this town. I love this town. You know what I love about this town is actually you. Everyone in it has got this massive soul.
We're Luton people, and that's what we care about.
Hello everyone, welcome along to another episode of the Luton Town Supporters Trust podcast, the award-winning, longest-running Luton Town podcast, having scooped bronze in the Best Football League podcast category in the Football Content Awards. This season our show is in association with Solid, providing opportunities, provisions and assistance so our academy can fulfil their potential. As I mentioned before the intro, we're looking ahead to Burnley versus Luton Town, Saturday afternoon, 3 p.m. up at Turf Moor. No UK coverage in terms of television for this one, so if you haven't got a ticket to the away end, you'll have to find other ways to follow the game. And, well, if their recent history is anything to go by, might not be seeing too many goals. That might not necessarily be a bad thing. We'll come on to that shortly. As I said prior to the intro, I've got James alongside me as always. Obviously it's a repeat of the first game of the season. That went severely tits up. Let's hope this one doesn't. It's really, really weird though, isn't it? Because they've got this incredible defensive record, which is incredible anyway, but it's even more incredible when you think how leaky it was last season. But they don't score many goals with it. I know they scored 4 at our place. There's the caveat. I know they scored 4 at our place. But as a general rule, that was an anomaly, as I guess you could say was us scoring against them, because they've only conceded 9 goals. It's almost impossible to believe it when you say it. 9 goals in 34 championship games this season. 25 clean sheets. James Trafford suddenly, making 88% of his saves this season. He saved the second most goals in terms of chances to goals of the entire season. Only Stoke's goalkeeper's performing better than him. It's just unbelievable. I mean, even on the opening day of this season, we had a couple of chances to score against them as well as the one that we did. You'd never have thought that what you saw on the opening day was going to lead to those kind of numbers. It's crazy.
Yeah, never in a million years, really. I thought, obviously, they punished us ruthlessly in attack, and if they were going to do anything, I thought it would be that. Because they did have some good attackers in the Premier League as well. They just were intent on trying to play out from the back, weren't capable of doing it, and would keep conceding loads of goals. I guess maybe they don't do that anymore, or they've just recruited better players. But it's whichever way you look at it, it's a remarkable and a formidable record. And when anybody going up there is well up against it, and that's even if you take away Luton's away record, because we had that hope on the Saturday where everybody's joyous on that, and I still am after that game. But when you look towards this one, you're like, this is one of the hardest afternoons you can possibly expect.
Yeah, the caveat to all of those numbers is we're recording this and before their game against Cardiff has finished. So, let's hope those numbers are still intact and that they've given Cardiff a good hiding, because obviously Cardiff are right in the mix around us, and that would be rather handy if they want to give them a good hiding, use up all of their goals in that game and not save too many for us. I think you're right. They've obviously recruited better players, right? I mean, that much is obvious. Because Trafford looked like he looked like our version of Kaminsky last season, didn't he? Whenever a cross came over, he was like you know, it wasn't happening for him, as we saw at their place last season. Of course, we should reference, I suppose, really, the last two visits in the last two seasons have ended 1-1 at Turf Moor. And my word, I think everyone would take that on Saturday afternoon, that is for sure. I certainly would do. Dan Potts obviously got the goal 2 years ago. He won't be doing that, but you never know. Carlton might well get a goal on Saturday like he did in the last game there. You know, if Elijah wants to boil some piss by bumping the goalkeeper out of the way at the same time, then so be it. They've clearly got better defenders, haven't they? Esteve has got lots of strong ratings, and there's a couple of others. But I do think the Chelsea loanee Bashir Humphreys, I think he's out injured at the minute. He's been playing left back for them. That could be important when you consider that we've suddenly got a speedster down the right-hand side. So maybe that's an area to attack. They don't score many goals, though. Again, I know before people shout at me that they scored 4 at our place, but Josh Brownhill's their top scorer. He's not a striker, he's a midfielder. And they obviously don't score many goals because with that defensive record, they should be miles clear in this division. They're not even in the automatic promotion spots. Sheffield United and Leeds both pulled away from them last weekend. Okay, we're hoping Burnley close in on them in midweek, but you know, something's up for them to be third with that defensive record, and maybe that's where we can exploit.
Yes, I mean, if you're looking for a chink in the armour, then yeah, I guess you are. I mean, we're laughing because it seems almost impossible when you put the two records together. Luton, you know, up until the weekend, have been struggling for goals. I mean, still only scored 1, and that haven't won once away all season. You know, picked up that home win. I guess what you'd be looking to do is then bounce on and get another one. But this is as hard as it comes. That is an incredible defensive record. There's no way you can make any other assumption about it. But I guess if you can keep it tight, and nick something is the best option you've got. But they're gonna have to play a bit more adventure than they did at the weekend. As much as we loved that game, because we got the victory, it wasn't the most fluid performance.
No, it wasn't. We'll come on to Luton in a minute because, as I said in the last podcast, there's so much to discuss, and we will cover the where we need to be better and everything else in this podcast. But let's just quickly do a couple more bits on Burnley. I've mentioned that the goalkeeper's got fantastic numbers. Listen, it'll be interesting to see if that rings true on Saturday. I mean, we've scored 11% of the goals they've conceded in the Championship this season against them. I mean, and that was on the opening day of the season as well.
That is a stat and a half.
It's an unbelievable thing. I mean, prior to Saturday, our last win was on the 20th of December. They haven't conceded a goal since the 21st of December in the Championship. 12 clean sheets on the trot is, I don't think I've ever come across numbers like that. And I know Preston scored 3 against them at the weekend, but that was very much a changed Burnley side. You almost got to write that off, really. They'll have taken it seriously, of course they would. Local rivals, FA Cup quarter-final at stake. But they made it pretty clear with their team selection that the Cardiff game is more important, and of course it would be. They're looking for an immediate return to the Premier League. Scott Parker is a bit of a pragmatic manager, isn't he? He's not necessarily one for the highlight reels and the entertainment. He's more a stickler for the results. And you know, why wouldn't you be? That's what he's judged on and that sort of thing. They do set up kind of, I mean, obviously under Company, they set up very much with a 4-3-3 with the wingers really pushed on and, you know, attacking fullbacks. More often than not, it was wingers playing fullback. But now it's not. It's Connor Roberts all play on the right-hand side. And they've got wingers that are more defensive. Jadon Anthony would be one of them. They rotate their left side quite a lot. In fact, Lyle Foster's been playing left wing for them recently. They've brought Ashley Barnes back from Norwich as well. It's not I mean, when you look at some of the attacks in this league on paper, man for man, player for player, some of them you look at Sunderland, Leeds, Middlesbrough, and you think, you're in for a right old day here defensively. Don't necessarily look at it and it stands out like that. I mean, of course it's effective. They wouldn't be third in the league if it wasn't. But I do think, you know, they are very much a defence first, keep a clean sheet, and believe that they've got one goal in them to win the game. Kind of how we used to be, 4 or 5 years ago, albeit to a much stronger defensive core than what we've ever had. So maybe if Saturday was a sign that our defence is getting its act together, maybe they're not the worst team to be taking on away from home, because, the away form is dreadful. But if we'd gone to Middlesbrough in this away form, then you're kind of like, it's a long afternoon. Maybe there is just something that we can get to an hour and they've not scored. And if we do, and they're chasing promotion and they're falling away a little bit because of the results of the weekend, their crowd might get onto them. They're obviously not going to be sort of full of the joys of springing from an entertainment point of view, because they've barely seen a goal. Certainly not seen many against them, but they haven't seen many for them at Turf Moor either. Most of their goals, if you think about it, I think they've scored in the mid-range of 30. They scored 5 at Plymouth the other week, didn't they? Scored 5 at ours. So in the other games, they're really not scoring many goals. Maybe we can get the crowd on their back a little bit easier than we might certainly say when we went to Leeds.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to have to try and do a lot better than we did against Watford in the last away day, which was what they were crowing about a decent first 10 minutes. That can't happen again. There weren't too many mistakes in the last game against Portsmouth defensively, but there still were some, and a very big one at the end that probably should have got punished. That's kind of when we were talking about that game, and we were sort of being very joyful about it, and why wouldn't you be? Because it's a first win after 12 winless games. The one thing I'm thinking, if you're going to cough up a chance to a team like Portsmouth, who had a lot of the ball, don't get me wrong, but they weren't really carving Luton open and creating too many. If you're gonna cough one up to them, then are you going to cough them up to the better sides? And will they take them? Probably. That's what we've seen this season. So that would sort of be my one criticism of the defensive performance of the weekend, because, like we said, and this is not to suggest that we should be perfect in the way that we've played or the way the season's gone. We're not expecting that. That's a bit pie in the sky. But, there are still, mistakes in that side. And you've got to cut those out against this lot. If they score first, and we've seen this in most teams this season, if they score first, it's a long road back against most teams. If they score first here, I think you need miracles.
If they score first here, I genuinely might get a head start on the journey home. Because, like you say, if we're not scoring at Watford, chances are we're not scoring here, particularly if they've got something to hang on to and don't really need to push it or anything like that. Let's switch it back to Luton then, because obviously that's what we're here for. I kind of know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask it anyway. In light of the fact that Cardiff is 3 days after Burnley, do we sack this game off and go all in on Cardiff? Strong term, probably the wrong term, sack it off, but you know what, you get the gist of the question.
I do, because the way, we as fans talk about football is different from the professional side of it. They will say, from the professional side of it, yes, we're going to go up there and give it a good go and try and get something because we've got something on the line. Of course. Well, if they go up there and there's visible signs of that, that they've sacked it off, then nobody will be happy about it. But the realism is where it comes into play for fans, isn't it? And that's where that question comes from. Do you sack it off? And I think that the pragmatic approach would suggest probably, don't give it everything on that one and focus on the Cardiff one, because that's the one that's going to make more difference. At the same time, once you've got that first win, you want to kick on and get more, because firstly, we've not got that many games to play with, so you can't just be sacking them off. And secondly, you want, if there's any momentum to be had, you've got to try and take it, because as we saw in the Great Escape, 2019, 2020, momentum was everything. Once we got it, it just felt like things started clicking. And it'd be kind of like the worst thing to go up there and roll over when you've just, brought the joy back a little bit at Portsmouth at the weekend. So it's a real tricky one. I understand where the question comes from, and you I think the fan side, he would go, yeah, that would make sense to focus it on there. But I think while there's a hope, small hope, you've got to try and take any of it.
Yeah, you do. Beating Cardiff is an awful lot easier than beating Burnley. The league table tells you that. We've beaten Cardiff, we haven't beaten Burnley. But obviously doing it that way, you then put a hell of a lot of pressure on your shoulders to beat to beat Cardiff. In fact, I'd go as far as saying you have to beat Cardiff if you did it that way. But obviously, you'd give yourself a better chance of beating Cardiff if everyone's fresh. I guess what could happen at Burnley is anyone that is vitally important to us that isn't completely 100% fit, and I'm thinking Cal Naismith immediately, and I'm maybe thinking Carlton Morris has been carrying something as well. Just leave them out, and if we get something from the game, happy days. But if those two can have 3 extra days of rest and be fully fit to go at Cardiff, that would make a lot more sense to me, really, than flogging Cal Naismith. Chances are we're going to lose the game anyway. You'd like to think if they are struggling attacking wise, that whoever comes in for Cal Naismith could probably do a similar job. They don't strike me as an attack that's going to pull defences here, there and everywhere. So we should be okay without Cal Naismith at the heart of the defence. That's kind of where I'm coming from, really. Do we leave like when we went to Sunderland, and I know, 1 or 2 of them were injured, but they were fit mighty quickly for the Sheffield United game that followed it, weren't they? Do we just kind of go down that route again? Look, not today, chaps. We've got people who can play that position. You get ready. You make sure you are 100% to go Tuesday night.
Yeah, I mean, that would be the temptation, wouldn't it, to do that?
Because I'm still in my mind, I still wonder if we did do that at Sunderland. We'll never know. They're not stupid enough to admit it, and I wouldn't want them to anyway. But the performance was so abject. Do you know what? It was, wasn't it? It was.
Well, it was.
Admittedly against a good side.
It was, but they were very good.
Yeah.
Even though probably only in 3rd gear. They were very good.
Let's hope this lot only play in 3rd gear as well.
Well, that would be handy if all teams out there can just play in 3rd gear for the remainder of the season and go for it. Yes. I know we're trying to find angles here, aren't we? Which way you can do it. And this is the problem that's going to be faced for Bloomfield for this week, to try and how do you get through this Burnley defence, and while it's also, while I understand you say they might not score that many goals, the fact that we let them have 4 on the first day, I mean, they ran riot, didn't they? It was shock, real shock.
The defence will be stronger on Saturday, whoever's in it, though, won't there? There won't be no Joe Johnson out of sync at left centre back, and whoever else was in, I can't even remember who. It's so long ago. It feels like about 5 years ago, not 5 months ago, 6 months ago. But and also it's a 3-game week, and we know the problem with 3 games a week. So if we are going to go easy on one of them, let's turn it into a 2-game week. I mean, do we get relegated if we lose on Saturday? No, because most teams are going there and losing. Certainly the ones that are around us. Hull went there a couple of weeks ago and lost 2-0.
I don't think we've won there for some time anyway, even in the Pomp, have we?
No.
It's been a very tough place to go, Turf Moor. So.
I mean, people will be shouting at me, but we've drawn 1-1 in the last 2 seasons there. We were pretty lucky to draw 1-1 there last season. I think it was the first time we looked at their goal when we scored that injury time equaliser, and not saying for 1 minute that they were overrunning us at the other end, because they wasn't. Kaminsky had a pretty easy night himself, but I'm more of the whole week here rather than scared that we can't get anything at Burnley. I mean, they draw Christ knows how many games 0-0, so we can get a 0-0. I'm not saying for 1 minute that we can't get a 0-0. Backs to the wall defensive performance like we showed in the second half on Saturday, but the effort that you would have to put into getting that would naturally have a detriment to the 2 games that follow, and those 2 games that follow are eminently winnable now. And it's a conundrum. I've put it out there. Let us know your thoughts. Are you happy to sack this off? Listen, I've got a ticket in the away end on Saturday. I'm probably am fine if I do see 4 or 5, 6 changes, but it would come with the caveat that everything, the kitchen sink, the swimming pool, the garage and everything else goes at Cardiff on the Tuesday night.
Yeah, I mean, nobody's given us a chance in hell, and I'm not even sure we are at the moment. I mean, because that's just the reality of the situation with how stingy they are. I mean, they're beyond stingy. Scrooge has got nothing on these guys, have they?
12 straight clean sheets. I mean, 12 straight clean sheets in the Championship.
Mm.
We ain't even we're nowhere near 12 all season. I think Saturday was our 7th this season in total.
That's quite remarkable for the season.
Well, you're right.
What I mean? That's quite good.
You're right. That's actually more of a stunning statistic than the 12 clean sheets in a row for them.
I mean, that is something to write home about, really, in a season where there hasn't been much. But I mean, it's just formidable. But again, we're thinking on a logical sense, but most of football thinking, isn't it, from fan sides of it, is not logical. Otherwise, if you expected you're going to get beat, you wouldn't be going, and others wouldn't be going. There's always that hope that you could win. It's just that the reality of it doesn't suggest on either side what they're doing, which is phenomenal, and what Luton have done away, which is some sort of pretty much bugger all. But then shocks can happen. And if Saturday was the turning of the tide, maybe, and that's kind of where it's pitched at the moment. It's like it's almost certain that it's not going to happen, but maybe, just maybe, something can.
I mean, the hope I am clinging on to is it would be peak Luton to do absolutely sod all away from home all season and then rock up and get a 1-0 win against a team that hasn't conceded since time began and potentially going to be playing in the Premier League next season. That would be peak Luton. Listen, we have scored against them this season, so, but...
And even then, that was unlikely because they battered us so much. I mean, I don't know how we even scored then. It was so one-sided a game. So, again, that's another tick in the hope column, isn't it?
It is. Unfortunately, there's not going to be a Tahith Chong to score the goal for us on Saturday. But, yeah, let us know. How would you approach this? I mean, it's a tough game. I guess games are running out and we've got to go for it and we just got to take our medicine for Tuesday night and things like that. One thing we are going to have to do if we are going to get anything or even keep them close on Saturday, we're going to have to play better than we did on Saturday. It was fantastic that we won, and Luton's first win after so long was never going to be pretty. Whenever runs like this break, they're never going to be pretty. It was pretty much the win it was always going to be. Scrappy, horrible, digging in.
Back to the wall most of it.
Grinding it out. And to be honest, maybe our next 2 or 3 wins, certainly our next away win will probably be very similar because it's been so long. So if we do go in front, we're going to psychologically, naturally, retreat and adopt the same tactics. But we're going to have to play better, aren't we? We're not going to see much of the ball, I wouldn't think, although to be fair, Scott Parker teams don't dominate the ball by any stretch of the imagination. But when we have it, we're going to have to make a heck of a lot better use of it and take better care of it, both than what we did do on Saturday, and certainly if you think back to a similar situation when we played Sunderland in terms of league position, similar situation, a whole lot better than we used the ball that night because we were dreadful with the ball that night. I mean, even when we were looking at the strikers, it was 20 yards away from them.
Yeah, and that's the worry if they replicate Saturday. As much as all the stuff around the game was wonderful in the result and the application and the running and the fight that we saw when with the ball at the feet. Well, it wasn't at feet most of the time. It was in the air. It was quite a long ball game. Sometimes from both teams, which didn't make for particularly enthralling purist spectacle, even though it was quite an exciting game. But I don't think you can do that. Portsmouth are down the bottom. I mean, they've pulled away somewhat from a decent run of results, but they've conceded more goals than Luton. They had done before the game. They've now obviously they had one more goal conceded, and now it's two. It's just that they've scored more and actually won some games in recent memory. But they are down the bottom. But you play like that against anyone in the top, probably six, and I think you quickly find out you get ruthlessly punished. So if we have the situation that we had in the second half against Portsmouth, where the defence were camped out on the 18-yard line, and nobody was chasing the ball up the field, and it was just coming back, and the entire Kenilworth Road was just shouting for that to happen, get out. If you have that, I don't think that you hold out against one of the better sides, regardless of how potent or not they are in front of goal.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, obviously, we said it in the last podcast, that level of fight, that level of determination, that spirit, that's the level that keeps us in the Championship. But that quality won't, or lack of, sorry. We've got to show more quality to stay. We're still looking at needing minimum 5 wins, most likely 6. You're not going to get 6 wins with that quality. We've got to put more quality on top of that. And as confidence builds, hopefully that comes, and that comes naturally. And as Matt gets a bit more ruthless and he drills these strong words into them. I mean, obviously they took notice of the "you must run more," because I don't know for certain, but I would imagine most people's running stats maxed out on Saturday for their season. Certainly the ones that have been involved all of the time anyway. Just my eyes would tell me that was the case. Maybe not Clicker, because his running stats were really, really high anyway, and it wasn't a box-to-box game from the midfielders, was it? It was box-to-box from back to front, but not necessarily from the midfielders. But in the main, I would imagine that's the case, and that's the pre-requirement here. We're going to have to run. We're going to have to work as hard as we can. We're going to have to throw ourselves in front of things, which we did towards the end of that game on Saturday. So those kind of things will help us on Saturday up at Burnley. But over these next 11 games, we have to put an awful lot more quality on top of that in open play. We're going to have to try and get Asgard in the game an awful lot more. We could do with Liam Walsh having the ball a little bit higher up the pitch, because he's got something that can make things happen. Izzy's end product, we could do with that being a whole lot better. And they've got the players to do it. We've now got to get it out of us, because if we just have that quality level, we're not going to get the wins. And as great as Saturday was, and I'll take another 5 or 6 of them, I just don't see the opponents that we've got in front of us that performance level will equate to those kind of wins. Yes, we might beat Derby with it. We might beat a Cardiff with it. But, even your run-of-the-mill your run-of-your-mill games that potentially got nothing to play for down the end of the line, your Bristol Cities, and maybe by then Coventry or even West Brom last day of the season, it's not going to get a result against them.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't have thought so. But you wonder how much of it was the circumstance of the game and the game that came before it, which was so disappointing, because it is in living memory that the first 45 minutes against Sheffield United was arguably Bloomfield's best, or the best under Bloomfield. So they can play, and if they can marry the Sheffield United first half performance with the fight, heart and desire of the Portsmouth performance, then yeah, you've just got to marry the two. But I mean, if you cough up, ridiculous amounts of possession to a good side, then I think that it comes undone pretty quickly, regardless of how many bodies you throw in the way. That's a dangerous tactic, I think, against one of the big boys.
Ultimately, we're going to have to score more goals. 1 goal a game isn't going to get us out of this, because, okay, we kept a clean sheet against Portsmouth. We said it going into that game, horrendous away record, that Portsmouth are on, and even then they should have scored. We're going to have, what have we got, 11 games left? You would think we're going to have to score somewhere in the vicinity of 20 goals over these 11 games. Obviously not all in the same game, but, we're going to have to get close to 2 a game in enough games to get us out of this mess. And to be honest, even on Saturday, we didn't really look like ever scoring a second goal. And okay, I completely understand the game situation and the game state and everything, and dropping back and sitting on what you had and protecting what you had, and the substitutions were very much in light of that. Everyone was desperate for a win. Of course we were, and that desperation for a win won't be as desperate having got it. I kind of get all of that. But we've only scored twice once under Bloomfield. That's 9 games now. In an awful lot of them, we haven't looked like scoring once, let alone twice. So that is going to have to be rectified. Listen, we're not going to score twice on Saturday, barring some weird football going on like a red card or a penalty or something like that. They haven't conceded 2 in a game all season. They're not going to concede 2 to us. It's just the way that the land lies. But from Cardiff onwards, we've got to try and find a way of getting a second goal, not just for winning the games, but just takes an awful lot of pressure off you rather than hanging on for a 1-0 all the time. It'd be a lot easier if you can coast to a 2-0 win.
The strikers haven't been in amongst the goals for a while. It's the exclusion of Brown recently.
I think someone said since our last win against Derby, McGuinness has scored as many goals as our strikers have combined. I think it's 2 each. I mean, that's got to change. That's got to change anyway, hasn't it? But
yeah, well, I mean, the stats on goals are pretty stark anyway. You raised the amount of big chances that Elijah's missed. I think on XG alone, he's supposed to be on about 11 point something goal. I mean, you can't score point goals, but 11 goals, he scored 5. And that says it all, really, doesn't he? And he's the one that gets. If he's got all the big chances, then Carlton's not even getting the big chances. So yeah, something does have to change. But Brown scored a goal, so hopefully that can change there. And the sooner Nordas gets off the mark, the better. But obviously, he's still pre-season and he didn't play at the weekend. That has got to change. The strikers have got to start scoring goals. There's no 2 ways around it.
No, that's right. I mean, for bringing it back to this game, we've always got set pieces. We'll always have set pieces on our side. They need to be a little bit better than what they were on Saturday as well. I like the Liam Walsh ones. They were really, really good. The Alfie ones, not quite so. A lot of people actually are discussing about why 2 people go over for the corner. So the reason why that is the case and why it was, I don't know why it wasn't the case beforehand. The reason why it is the case is what you'll see is if Liam Walsh and Alfie Doughty are standing over a corner, immediately 2 people will come out. Therefore, when they put the ball in the box, there's more space for the defenders and the attackers to run onto it, rather than if there's only one, you can block defenders off a lot easier. Less bodies to block, more chance of us winning the header. Hasn't happened yet, but that's the game plan behind it anyway. Set pieces. I refuse to believe, even with this fantastic defensive record, Trafford looked an absolute mare under any cross that we put in the 2 games last season. I refuse to believe that has changed. Listen, that must be the most, if it has changed to the levels that the numbers tell you, that must be the most impressive coaching performance of all time, because he literally looked like he could play for the England cricket team, the amount of stuff he was dropping. And now, he'd get in the Indian one because of the amount of stuff he's catching. But let's test him, because he certainly didn't fancy it for the equalising goal up there, did he? Elijah didn't really do anything. He only stood his ground, but he didn't fancy it. Let's find out how he is. Let's get the ball in the mixer. We've got enough tall players now, haven't we?
It may be that the Burnley defenders are just protecting him more. If he can't get through their defences, which seems the case, then he's not going to have as much to do. He had a hell of a lot to do last season. All 3 promoted sides in the Premier League had a lot to do there. So it might be a bit of that, but
well, let's give him something to do then.
Exactly. While we know that about him from the previous season, you've got to try and test it, haven't you? Even though the final ball still needs to be improved, the fact of getting down the flanks a bit more now is something you need to try and test. And the pace of Izzy Jones, they kind of didn't work him into the game too much in the first half. Was a bit frustrating against Portsmouth. And then I'll never sort of understand, if you've got the pace that he has, why he just doesn't use it all the time. Because there's been many occasions actually this season where he's just, and this is quite old-fashioned football, like you watch black and white footballers of football of wingers like Stanley Matthews. There's no Ronaldo tricks or anything. They just knock it past the defender and run. He's done that, and it's a great throwback. If you've got the pace to do it, why not? I never sort of understand why you wouldn't just test that all the time, because I think he's got the beating of most fullbacks that it will be coming up against. So that's one way I think that he could probably get at. But yeah, once he gets into those positions to cross, then he's got to deliver now.
Yeah, that's it. Let's throw some balls in the box. Yeah, let's get the ball out to him, because, as I said earlier, I'm pretty sure Bashir Humphreys is injured. So they are going to have not so much a makeshift left back. Obviously, they'll have 2 players for each position, but not their regular left back in there. So let's see what he's made of. I don't think the left back gets as much help from the winger as what the right back does, because Jadon Anthony started. I remember him playing left back against us when he was at Bournemouth with Parker. So he's out on the right hand wing. So basically they'll double up down that side, which is fine because Alfie's not got the pace to get past too many anyway, has he? So that's that might work in our favour. Team changes then. Obviously, I wanted Radical in the last one. I fully accepted we're not going to get that. I didn't think we would get it anyway. That was just how I would have done it had Bloomfield, if I was Bloomfield. But of course, we've got a little bit more hope now than what we had then. But I'm still making some changes. I am. I'm still looking at that Cardiff game, and I just can't take my eyes off it. I just think that that's so pivotal in our survival battle. I don't really see a way out of this. Well, in fact, I don't see a way out of this if we lose against Cardiff. I probably don't if we draw it. I really do think we have to win that game. Oh, obviously that will change if we get if we get something on Saturday. So I'm making some changes. I mean, Matt, there's no point in me talking about the goalkeeper anymore. Matt's made it perfectly clear he's his man, and that's fine. That's his decision. I think I'm giving Naismith a rest here, though. I just want him for the next 2. Bell's fine. I'd give Christ this game. I don't think they've got a great deal of pace. Ian Fleming has been their striker. He's at Millwall. He was a number 10 at Millwall, so maybe that's a reason why they don't score many goals if they've not got an out-and-out striker. We're not expecting Mark McGuinness to be fit.
No.
And to be honest, even if he is, I'm saving him for Cardiff as well. So I'll have to bring Mads Anderson in and just hope that they don't tear us apart like Watford did.
Watford tore Luton apart because they weren't putting challenges in. Now that seemed to have been rectified after the strong words of Bloomfield when they played Portsmouth. There was plenty of challenges in that game. It's quite physical, actually. One of the things I think that the crowd got behind. So hopefully that element of the game and maybe a mindset change and a little shift can help. Yeah, I see the temptation to rest certainly Naismith. But do you want that many changes in the back line? Because that has been a problem. Settled sort of partnerships has been a problem. But then everything in defence has been a problem, hasn't it?
Well, he's straight back in for the Cardiff game anyway. He's only missing this one. Listen, having played so little since November, is Cal Naismith going to play 3-4 games in 8 days? I just don't see it. So give him the game off that we're least likely to win. I'm not admitting defeat. I'm not accepting defeat. But go and look at the odds that the bookmakers have got for these 3 games. We're something like 6-1 to win at Burnley. The odds aren't out for the rest of them, but knowing the way they work, we'll be no bigger than 2-1 to win at Cardiff, and we'll be no bigger at home to Middlesbrough. The odds will tell you it's the hardest game, even if the league table doesn't. And also, I'm not expecting too much of the defence here. I just want the defence to just stand there and defend. So, just bring Mads in. Obviously, the caveat to that is if Reece Burke is back, then that's different. I'll put Reece Burke in and risk him because I know I've got Cal Naismith in reserve for the next 2 games.
Yeah, I mean, that may be an option because we heard on Friday that Reece had an illness which had put his comeback back by a week. But for the 2 weeks prior to that, we were told that he was close. So, that could be an option. But I think I know it's only one game that Makoto played and he was very good, but the pace element of what he's got and how he'd be able to recover and things, I wouldn't be adverse to having Mads Anderson alongside him. It's just that there's a lack of game time between them, isn't it? That's my only reticence. But
We're not
if for the reasons you're laying out, which they're fair. They're fair. I think that would be okay. I think I would play Makoso there, and I'd be happy if Anderson came in.
Yeah, Bell, Mads, Makoso for me, and then we'll again, it would be Burke for Mads if Burke's fit, and if Burke can't then play against Cardiff, well, at least I know I've got Cal Naismith coming back, and he definitely plays against Cardiff.
Well, I suppose it doesn't really matter if he can play against Cardiff, because you're resting the players that will be coming back. We know who will be coming back in that scenario, wouldn't we? So it wouldn't really matter, and he could play, and he will never do anything other than 100% anyway, Reece Burke, and that's been noted by both managers this season, that he's full throttle. And Edwards always used to say that I wish he'd sort of just hold something back sometimes, because he's just too eager, and I don't know, maybe that's half of the problem. But if he comes back, that's the option, isn't it? Because you are then able to make these changes that allow for this. What's the word you use? Going up there and
sacking it
off. It's not sacking it off. That's not what I mean. But yeah, you are allowed to. You are then given those changes that could come in, and you'd be relatively okay with them, and you know what's coming for the next game then.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, well described.
Got there in the end.
We did, yeah. Wing-backs are going again because we've got no other option. In fact, whilst we play this formation, they're going to have to play the last 11. They're just going to have to manage themselves during games. There is no other option in this formation of those two roles. I know people will say, well, Josh Bowler played it at Preston. He made it perfectly clear he doesn't want to play right wing-back. That's not where he sees his game, and I wouldn't want someone out there who doesn't want to be out there, so that would lead to Izzy Jones being out on the right-hand side, Alfie obviously on the left-hand side. I guess there is talk about maybe saving Alfie for these games, but again, we just haven't got anyone else to play that position. Midfield 3, I'd have no problems with them going again, but I don't know, will Liam Walsh need a rest at some point? If so, let's give it to him. I mean, he's going to get dog's abuse on Tuesday night anyway, isn't he? But being a former Swansea player, but that might spur him on anyway, you know. I mean, Naismith will as well, I guess, being a former Bristol City player. But I don't know, could we go Lamine, Clark, Asgard here? Just give Walsh a little bit of a rest. Played a lot of football recently, hasn't he? That position's kind of energetic. Can he do the next 3 games? Are we more likely to be on the ball in the next 2 games than we are on Saturday? I guess is the big thing, because there's no point in playing him if he's not going to be on the ball. We might as well play me or you, because just be running around, whereas at least Lamine's got that physicality about him that, you know, can offer something different. He seems to be massively out of favour. I mean, well, I know he had a bad game at Sunderland, but it wasn't that bad. I mean, when Zach's coming on to perform a defensive midfield role ahead of him on Saturday, you're kind of asking questions of what's going on there. Maybe this is the game to play him, and just, you know, we're not going to go up the pitch very far. You know, we're going to be spending most of the time in our own half. Maybe play him in this one. Clark can play again. He's just had a rest. I know you're talking that he's managing injuries. So many people will be managing injuries at this time of year. That's just natural. And Tello Asgard, we haven't really got that other kind of physical midfielder, really. I mean, obviously we're missing Tom Krause. You can forget about Baptiste. We're not seeing him again this season. We're not seeing Marv. Likely not seeing Marv again this season. So we've only really got 5 central midfield options if you include Nelson, Walsh, Fanny, Clark, and
well, he has talked of trying to find a new position for Bowler, isn't he? As a 8.
Can't see that in a game of this magnitude, though. Maybe a game where you're on the ball, because he's got good. He's got good touches. He's got good skills on the ball, but I don't know. Maybe we have more of the ball than what I think, but we haven't had it there in the last 2 years. Okay, that's under Company, not under Scott Parker, but generally when Luton go away from home, we only get 30-35% of the ball against the worst teams, let alone the better ones. So maybe the people that are good on the ball, just save them, because we will have the ball on Tuesday night against Cardiff. I'm sure of that. I watched them against Aston Villa. I know it's Aston Villa. But I watched them against Aston Villa in the Cup the other night, and they were really, really poor on the ball. I did actually watch Cardiff against Plymouth last weekend, as I mentioned as well, and they were no better on the ball then. So we'll have the ball on Tuesday night. That's when I want the Walshes, maybe even the bowlers somewhere along the line as well. I just don't really see the point here, to be honest, if he has to rest. Now, if he can do the next 3 games, Liam Walsh, then that's fine, crack on. But it's that third game intensity that we're going to need, aren't we? Because home to Middlesbrough. So, yeah, I think I'm going Lamine Clark, Asgard in midfield. And even then, I wouldn't be averse to Asgard getting a rest either if I can find an option to rest him with.
He's young enough, though, isn't he, that I think he'd be okay. I mean, the thing with Lamine is it is an odd one, but the way that it's been phrased is that he's favouring more experience, which is that's fine. You're in a relegation scrap, but
he didn't favour experience when he brought Zach Nelson on for him on Saturday, did he? That I was fine with what he was saying about Lamine until that substitution. We weren't trying to attack at that point. What we had, we hold. And he brought Zach Nelson on, who's not really physically of the level that Lamine is. Technically, he might be better right now for English football. That was the first time where I thought, what's going on there? Really thought, what's going on there?
But you can still make the case for Zach having more experience of the English game. It's I wouldn't necessarily say it's an age thing, but Lamine's come from Stockholm. And obviously, Nelson's played a fair few games now for Luton, so sort of knows the level. It could be that, but I think it probably is a key one for Lamine's season. He's obviously going to be a Luton player, but if he doesn't feature, then maybe that is a question to be asking then.
Yeah, I think so. Listen, if he doesn't play in a game where we're less likely to have the ball, what game is he going to play in right now? That would be my question that I would pose. Front 2, I've already said I will give Morris this game off. He plays every game, doesn't he? And even when he gets taken off, he's taken off so late that it's hardly a rest, is it? I mean, even on Saturday, what was it, 88th minute when he was taken off? He's got to be holding... he's been holding knees and hamstrings and that for the last few weeks. He didn't start there last season, did he? He came off the bench to score the equaliser. Let's go down that route. Let's just go Elijah and Brown. You never know what. This might be the game that Elijah converts a big chance in, and if it is, then the 10 afterwards, happy days, because he'll have his dander up, and he might score those 5 or 6 goals that keep us in the division. Ultimately, we might not get no big chances to miss, and that's fine anyway. But at least he'll put the defenders under a bit of pressure. Seemed to have a bit of a bee in his bonnet on Saturday. That having been taken out the side like he was last season, there were signs that he didn't like it, and he was willing to fight on Saturday. I know it was only a short cameo, and you could max out, in 5 or 10 minutes or whatever. This feels like more of an Elijah game to me than it feels like a Morris game, because their defence is going to know how to deal with strikers if we're pumping long balls up, right? You don't concede 9 goals all season if you can't deal with a striker. So maybe offer them the different kind of striker, the striker that they don't face very often in this division in Elijah, because 9 times out of 10 he ain't completely sure what he's going to do, so the defender's got no chance. So I'd go Elijah. Then it's who would I go alongside him? I just think Brown's work rate is really, really good. We're going to have to work so bloody hard here. So yeah, I'd go with them 2 as a front 2, and then bring Morris on the hour or whatever if we're in the game. If we're not in the game after an hour, then forget about it and save him for Tuesday. But I think, maybe have Elijah press in. He might force a mistake out of Trafford. I mean, he did last time we were there,
Yeah, and this is why when you're looking for little signs of change, as we spoke about in the Portsmouth one, the cameo when he came on, although he needs goals to improve confidence. I think the way that he sort of sealed the victory for Luton in the way that he chased after the ball, had that one chance where he knocked it past the keeper, it was never going in, just dented the momentum that Portsmouth had. And if you're not going to get goals, then something else positive that you can do, and that was positive for him. Whereas at Watford, and everybody had a stinker at Watford, but you could pass to him and his second touch was a tackle, because it just wasn't sticking. So if you're going to play your way into confidence of any sort, then first you want goals. Okay, he didn't get a goal, but he did that, and maybe that's going to aid him going forward.
Yeah, I'd go with him. Whilst you were saying that, I'm just wondering if I'd go Millie Ali alongside him, just for that pace threat. But I think he's probably more a later in the game option, isn't he? So yeah, Eli and Brown up front for me, I think. So I'm not making that many changes. I'm only making 3 changes from Saturday's side. So, all of this talk I've been doing of sacking it off, it's not really sacking it off, is it? And you don't lose too much bringing Eli in for Morris. In fact, in this kind of game, you might gain something. Yeah, you probably lose a bit leaving Naismith out. But again, what's to come's more important. Ditto Walsh and Lamine. So yeah, I'm only making 3 changes, but I think that's an 11 that can go and give them a game. Like you say, we don't want to get rolled over. You just don't know if goal difference is going to play a part. Right now, it's not, but you just don't know. Cardiff took a 7-0 hammer in the other week. If someone else around us takes one of them, when they run into the big boys on the wrong day, it might present itself. So we don't want that situation. If we, if the game goes like everyone expects it to or thinks it will, if we come out of it with a 2-0, there's no real damage done.
No, and the fear is that Luton are probably due a pasting at some point, the way that they've been playing. Bloomfield's kept the score down. That's a good thing.
And I think we are harder to beat. I think the eyes will tell you we are harder to beat, not hard enough. Mm-hmm. But we're so much easier to play against the other end, and that's what obviously needs to change, as we've said. That's the team that I would go with. Any major changes to that?
I mean, I'd be fine with all that, because you're not going up there with the realistic expectation of getting something.
I mean, ultimately, look, we want to be more positive about a game of football. They've lost 2 games in 34 this season in the league. The caveat is they've drawn 14, so maybe we can get a draw. But that draw's only going to be 0-0 in all likelihood. It's not going to be a high-scoring draw, is it? And, only lost 2 games all season, and they've been to the better sides.
If Luton can get a draw, a 0-0, I think the confidence that brings a backline, 2 back-to-back clean sheets, would feel almost like a victory. It's not going to reflect on the table, of course, but we're talking about momentum and shifting from what had been a pretty dire situation a week and a half ago. So if you can build on that in any way, and yeah, I think the likelihood, if you're going to get anything from Burnley, is going to be a draw. Well, even head-to-heads have suggested that that's the outcome of the games up there. Man, I'd love a 0-0.
You and me both, mate. Listen, Leeds and Sunderland went there and drew 0-0. That's the size of the task that's in front of us. We'll conclude the podcast with score predictions. It is an odd-numbered game, so it's my turn to go first. Sorry, even-numbered game, 36th game. Me to go first. That's the score, 0-0.
Optimistic, yeah. Well, in keeping with what I went with...
Here comes that reverse psychology nonsense again.
Reverse psychology for the win. I'm going to make it a phrase if it kills me. Yeah, they're going to lose 1-0.
Not overly sure I wouldn't take that, to be honest. There is the fear that this could go tits up, isn't it? I mean, they just beat Sheffield Wednesday 4-0 in the Championship, and we saw what Sheffield Wednesday were like when we played against them. Yeah, tough assignment. Look, there's no other way of dressing this up. We will be a lot more positive about our chances against Cardiff. We will do. Ultimately, we've said it all season, these 4 at the top are in their own mini league, and the rest of us are all fighting about it. So there's no point in dressing it up to be something that it's not. If you've got a ticket for the away end on Saturday, get right behind the boys, where they are going to need all of our support. This is a tough assignment. It is. But you never know. If we score a goal, and neither of us think we will, but if we do score a goal, that's often enough to get something against Burnley, because they're not free scoring themselves. So, yeah, get right behind the boys, and let's see what we can get out of this game. Get your score predictions into us. You've got plenty of time to do that. This is out at a normal time, so have your score predictions. Do you see the town getting anything? Do you see Burnley scoring plenty. Do you see Town scoring? Let us know. Let us know how you would approach it from a team selection. Have I got it right? I couldn't have got it much more wrong the last time round, and I was absolutely fine with it. I think I've gone in the approach formation-wise that Matt's gone anyway. So let's see how many changes he makes. How many would you make? Let us know in the comments. A slightly longer preview than what we would normally do. We did warn you in the last podcast that we would talk about the negatives of Saturday in this one rather than in the last one. So just before we go, just a huge good luck to Mark Crowther, who completes his walk to Turf Moor on the morning of this game. He will be walking from Rochdale to Burnley on Saturday morning, which I think is where he's going to be listening to this. So if you are listening to this then, Mark, keep going, and we'll look forward to seeing you at Turf Moor, mate. Conclusion of a really, really busy week for Mark. He's walked the equivalent of Luton to Burnley, which...
Yeah, well done, Mark.
It's long enough to drive, let alone walk. So, well done, mate. Last effort, one last push, keep going, and we'll see you at Turf Moor and look forward to doing it then. Thanks for watching or listening, however it is that you've consumed this podcast. Do please keep subscribing. Obviously, this is the first of a 3-game week, so podcasts are going to come thick and fast at you, and we'll try and get some out to you in the international break as well, because I know that so many want to hear from the new trust chairman, and we'll try and get that to happen as well. Thanks to the Barber Club and the Lower Level in Luton for hosting our studio, to Sean Grant and the Wolfgang for our intro music, and to Ed Smith Creative for all the designs that you see on set. Until next time, where we'll review what we hope will be a promising afternoon from Jimbo and myself. Come on, you Hatters, let's do this.
I believe our supporters are the best supporters in the country.
I love this town. I love this town. I love this town. You know what I love about this town is actually you. Everyone in it has got this massive soul.
We're Luton people.